Tonight we're heading to a quiet moonlit courtyard somewhere deep in the Vietnamese countryside. The walls are faded ochre, chipped by time and humidity. A bamboo gate creaks gently in the wind. The night air carries the scent of wood smoke and lemongrass. And just beyond the threshold, there's an old copper pot bubbling over an open fire. Inside, fragrant stalks hiss and steam, curling vapor rising into the stars. This isn't some luxury spa. This is just how bedtime used to begin. You crouch beside the pot and watch as an elderly woman tosses in another handful of fresh herbs. Lemongrass, surely, and maybe a touch of something minty. She's humming, unhurried, the tune as familiar as brushing your teeth. You're handed a towel and motioned toward a wooden bench. It's steam bath time. Not the sweating to death kind, mind you. This is a gentle, warm fog, designed to calm your nerves and lull your body into stillness. No harsh lights, no tech, just heat, scent, and rhythm. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing the bedtime roll call from around the world. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch out your legs as steam envelops your skin, clinging to your clothes. Every culture has its pre-sleep rituals, whether it's warm milk, lavender oil, or doom scrolling while pretending to care about your circadian rhythm. But here in old Vietnam, sleep was something you earned. Not with exhaustion, but with preparation. The evening steam bath, often done in an open-air corner of the home, was more than just hygiene. It was transition. You were shifting from the noise of the day to the silence of the night. And lemongrass wasn't just thrown in for its nice citrusy smell. In traditional Vietnamese medicine, known as thuoc nam, lemongrass essay was believed to push out bad wind, cool the body, and settle the breath. Pair it with perilla leaves, maybe some ginger root, and you've got yourself a fragrant prelude to slumber. Historians still argue whether these steam rituals were borrowed from neighboring cultures like the Chinese or Khmer, or whether they evolved locally over centuries of herbal experimentation. But one thing's clear, nobody was rushing through them. You dab your face with a damp cloth and sink onto a woven mat. The sounds of crickets take over. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster. Yes, at night. Because apparently no one told him the rules, crows half-heartedly. A bamboo pipe gurgles softly as someone prepares tobacco. Even the act of inhaling was slow. Sleep here was coaxed, not commanded. What's fascinating is that these rituals weren't reserved for special occasions. They were part of nightly life, especially in rural households with strong links to ancestral practice. Elders passed down, which leaves to steam, which oils to rub on the temples, and which prayers to murmur. You probably won't survive this regimen in your current TikTok-frazzled state. But hey, we're here to imagine. In some families, kids help prepare the herbal mix every evening, sorting stalks, tying bundles, even singing along to lullaby tunes while doing it. You can picture a small boy humming, his fingers still sticky from fruit, tossing basil leaves into the pot as the sun disappeared behind the rice paddies. And here's the thing. While lemongrass and ginger were the stars, there were dozens of lesser-known additions. Dried guava leaves for skin, betel stems for circulation, citronella for pest deterrence. One fringe favorite? Smashed tram leaves, melaleuca or paperbark, which gave off a sleepy eucalyptus-like vibe, especially helpful during the rainy season. Steam was both scent and sound, a hissing lullaby. And you didn't even need to get fancy. Some villagers would just boil the herbs, pour the water into a basin, and squat above it with a blanket tented over their head. Budget spa day meets respiratory therapy. Interestingly, some monks and healers claimed that steaming also released honvia, scattered soul fragments, and helped call them back home before sleep. A spiritual callback, if you will. Whether literal or metaphorical, the point was, go to bed whole. As the last of the steam curls away into the air, you're handed a cup of something warm, light, grassy, with a sharp, minty afterbite. Not quite tea, not quite broth. Just a signal that the next phase is about to begin. Your limbs are heavier now in that good way. The kind of fatigue that feels earned, like post-yoga or post-sunset swim. The moon's rising, casting soft shadows across the courtyard tiles. And the idea of screens, alarms or fluorescent lights seems laughably absurd. This was a world where the act of sleeping was sacred enough to prep for. A ceremony, not a side effect. And we're only getting started. You pad slowly across the courtyard, your skin still tingling slightly from the steam, and your breath feels oddly clearer, as if your lungs have remembered how to work without caffeine or traffic fumes. The old woman who brewed the pot is now perched beside a low wooden shelf, arranging bundles of dried plants like a sleepy apothecary stocking for the night shift. You shuffle closer, nose first, catching whiffs of something sweet and grassy, something earthy, and, yes, something that smells like it might scare off mosquitoes and small demons. She reaches for a pouch filled with fine, wiry threads, gossamer strands of what looks like dried chrysanthemum petals. Vietnamese herbalists, especially those from northern mountain villages, often praised chrysanthemum, hoa cúc, for its cooling properties. It's not just grandma's cold remedy. Here, it was bedtime's best friend, brewed into a light tea or crushed into poultices for the forehead. It helped lower body temperature and soothe overactive minds. Basically, nature's gentle sedative without the questionable side effects and commercial jingles. You sip from a tiny clay cup she hands you, warm and vaguely floral. It's got a tinge of bitterness, but in that way that feels like it's working, like the plant is arguing with your stress hormones and winning. Historians still argue whether the wide use of chrysanthemum in Vietnam was influenced more by Chinese herbal traditions or indigenous mountain folk practices. The lines blur easily. Mountain shamans and Confucian-trained doctors often shared knowledge across rice terraces and river valleys. Medicine didn't care for borders as much as it cared for results. Nearby, a small cloth sachet is tucked beneath a child's pillow. You lean in. It's filled with dried lotus seeds, crumbled jasmine, and a trace of rauma, gotu kola, often called the herb of longevity. The idea wasn't just that it smelled nice. These ingredients were believed to harmonize internal energy, help release lingering heat, and quiet that little voice in your head that insists on replaying every awkward moment since 2009. One quirky tidbit. Vietnamese parents sometimes stuff their kids' sleep sachets with dried shiso leaves, not for sleep exactly, but to ward off night terrors caused by bad winds or mischievous spirits. Yes, it's the herbal equivalent of a dream catcher, except it smells faintly of licorice and basil. You glance up and notice wind chimes hanging from the rafters above the sleeping mats. Carved from hollow bamboo, they make the softest clinking sound when stirred. There's debate among folklorists about whether these were meant to calm the wind spirits or simply to lull the sleeper with gentle, irregular rhythms. Either way, it works. You're halfway to a nap, and you've barely moved. On a nearby bench, another old man is grinding something with a pestle. The result looks like moss, smells like wet mint, and when he adds it to hot water, it fizzes ever so slightly. That's la voy ficus leaves, prized for their ability to aid digestion and bring the body to a restful baseline. While you might be tempted to reach for melatonin gummies, these folks trusted in their backyard pharmacy. But don't get the wrong idea. This wasn't some dreamy herbal utopia. Some of these brews tasted like something scraped off the forest floor. There's even a historical account from the early Nguyen dynasty, where an advisor reportedly refused a bedtime brew because, and I quote, it smelled like a soaked rat and promised worse upon drinking. Charming, right? Still, these formulas endured. They were passed down orally, not because they tasted amazing, but because they worked, or at least were believed to. And in a world where dreams were considered messages, sleep was too important to leave to chance. Now, about those dreams. Some healers believed specific herbs influenced dream clarity. Mugwort, Ngaiku for instance, was burned like incense near the bed to invite vivid, often prophetic dreams. Yes, you heard that right. Spiritual Netflix via leaf smoke. Burnt gently on a charcoal plate, it was said to calm the subconscious, while also keeping away unwelcome dream visitors. Ghosts, lingering ancestors, or just nosy spirits with boundary issues. Imagine trying that in a studio apartment with a smoke alarm and nosy landlord. No sir, I'm not hotboxing mugwort again. It's medicinal. There's a thin line between herbalism and ritual in Vietnam's older traditions. The very act of preparing your bed, arranging herbs, wiping the mat, placing your head toward the east, was laced with intention. It wasn't superstition exactly. It was care. A belief that how you went to sleep shaped how you woke up, and perhaps what the spirits whispered while you floated in that in-between state. You can almost hear the whispered instructions passed down through generations. Crush this leaf, boil that bark, don't forget the lotus seeds for sweetness, and never, never sleep with your feet pointing toward the door. That was the ghost path. And doing so was an open invitation for things you really didn't want showing up. These customs weren't confined to one region. From the misty highlands near Sapa to the sultry deltas of the Mekong, herbal sleep lore took on local flavors. Literally. Coastal villages leaned into dried sea herbs with mineral-heavy notes, while inland communities preferred mountain roots and floral leaves that grew high above the mosquito line. And here's a weird one. In some villages, parents used to wrap their babies in blankets that had been dried in the smoke of burning guava leaves. Not for scent, but because it was believed the smoke calmed infant spirits and encouraged peaceful naps. Science hasn't quite caught up with that one. But hey, you're not about to question the sleep of babies who don't scream, are you? You lie back, finally, on the cool sleeping mat. That herbal tea has mellowed your breath. The air smells faintly of crushed leaves and ancient wood. And the last thing you hear is the soft rattle of a sachet being hung above your head. Its contents are a mystery mix of petals, seeds, and good intentions. The ceiling above you is woven from palm leaves, and tiny holes between the fronds cast silver pinpricks of moonlight on the mat. A soft rustling comes from the corner, a sleepy gecko adjusting its grip on the wall, and the scent of the herbs beneath your pillow deepens. You inhale slowly, noticing something else folded into the mix. A subtle citrus, but grounded. Familiar, yet elusive. Turns out, it's Vauboy, dried pomelo peel. Not just a lovely name for a candle. For generations, Vietnamese healers have used pomelo rind not only to scent the air, but to calm the nervous system and banish restlessness. It's the olfactory equivalent of someone whispering, "Shh, you're safe now," right into your central nervous system. You rub your temples absently, like you're helping the calm seep in. The practice of using pomelo isn't new. In fact, during the Tran dynasty, royal bathhouses reportedly infused entire pools with floating pomelo blossoms and peel shavings, so the emperor could soak his anxiety off before bed. The historical records don't say whether it worked, but they do suggest the emperor frequently fell asleep in the tub, which, you have to admit, is a power move. Historians still argue whether the popularity of pomelo-derived remedies came from royal influence or older animist traditions in which citrus was thought to ward off lurking nighttime entities. Whatever the reason, it smells divine, and no one seems too concerned about exact origins when their sleep improves by a full REM cycle. You peek over at the woman from earlier. She's gently pressing another blend into a cloth sachet. This one is for a child who's been struggling to sleep since the monsoon arrived. It's packed with dried congot, Vietnamese sweetgrass. Less well known than its Chinese or Indian cousins, but locally celebrated for its calming effects and slight antihistamine properties. And here comes a quirky little twist. In some villages, the grass was also tied in tiny bundles and placed inside the hems of clothing, not for sleep, but to keep kids from crying during midday naps. Some say it worked. Others say it just gave kids something to fidget with. Either way, parents swore by it. And who are we to challenge centuries of desperately sleep-deprived caretakers? You glance again at the collection of herbs on the shelf, neatly divided between calming leaves, grounding roots, and smokables, which were either burned as incense or made into compressors placed directly on the chest or forehead. One of the most beloved in this category? Tram Hoang, agar wood. In Vietnam, agar wood is sacred, scarce, and deeply intertwined with rituals of rest, grief, and renewal. A tiny sliver of Tram Hoang costs more than a decent dinner in the city, and it burns slowly, releasing a deep, resinous scent that seems to whisper directly to the back of your brain. Vietnamese monks have used it for centuries in meditation practice. Sleep shamans? Yes, that was a thing. Believed it could guide wandering spirits back into the sleeper's body gently, especially after fever dreams or spiritual fright. Modern science? Still catching up. Some researchers believe agar wood's chemical compounds do affect GABA receptors in the brain, but studies remain thin. What's not thin is the level of reverence people have for the stuff. You don't just burn Tram Hoang for fun. It's more like summoning peace itself in a cloud of aromatic authority. And don't get too comfy yet. We haven't even talked about Jiao Van Trang or white hyacinth bean. These pearly little legumes, when dried and ground, were added to congee or tea for those suffering from insomnia related to digestive imbalance. Yep, ancient Vietnamese herbalists were already connecting gut health with sleep quality. Long before wellness influencers caught on, they believed if your stomach was uneasy, your dreams would follow suit, turbulent, muddled, or scattered. A calm gut, on the other hand, birthed smooth dreams, a phrase that's still used today, whispered by grandmothers as they spoon warm broth into sickly children. You smile a little at the idea. Smooth dreams. You could use some of those. Some fringe practitioners even went a step further, prescribing jiao van trang with roasted rice mashed into a paste and applied to the soles of the feet. Why the feet? Because that's where the spirit escaped during disturbed sleep, apparently. Does this have any basis in science? Who knows? But it makes for a delightfully weird image. Grandma squatting beside your toes, applying paste while muttering lullabies. Honestly, it's kind of touching. Historians still argue whether these foot pastes had any pharmacological effect, or if they were just cozy distractions to help the body wind down. Either way, if someone's willing to massage bean paste onto your arches at 10 p.m., that's love, or possibly exhaustion-fueled desperation. Maybe both. You wiggle your toes under the blanket now, imagining a little dose of bean paste goodness doing its job. Just above your head, the bamboo chimes stir again in the breeze. This time, you notice something hanging beside them. A small cloth scroll, hand-painted in ink. The characters are faded, but one stands out. Tin, meaning quiet or still. Turns out, in some Vietnamese temples, monks painted that same character over the entrance to their sleeping quarters. Not just to honor silence, but to call it into being. The brush stroke itself was said to carry the energy of stillness. You wonder if your own bedroom wall could use something similar. Probably wouldn't hurt. You shift on the mat, body heavier now, eyelids doing that fluttering thing like they're trying to decide if it's socially acceptable to knock off early. And you haven't even reached the stronger stuff yet. The roots and barks and fermented herbs stored in old ceramic crocks. Those are coming. The night is long. But your breath is slow, your heart is quieter, and the herbalists of the past seem to be nodding in approval. Just before sleep takes you, you remember something. The woman from earlier said these remedies work best when you believe they will. Not in a magical way, but in the sense that trust itself is medicine. The body rests more easily when it feels held. By people, by plants, by rituals that whisper, "You're allowed to let go now." So you do. Your breath falls into rhythm with the rustling of the thatched roof above you. Somewhere, a frog clears its throat like it's preparing to deliver a TED talk, then promptly decides it's too late for that sort of thing. You're comfortably warm beneath a thin cotton blanket, and the scent in the air has shifted again. Earthier now, a little smoky, almost like cinnamon left to toast in the sun. You lift your head just slightly and spot the source. A bundle of roots tied together with red string hanging over a small cooking pot. That's Q bean voi, or Stephania root. It looks like something a wizard might pull from a satchel right before banishing a ghost. But this gnarly root has long been Vietnam's answer to the racing mind. Forget white noise machines. People here have been boiling and sipping this bitter brew for centuries to knock themselves out. The root itself is incredibly potent, which is why it's used sparingly. And why, in some families, the tradition of preparing it was reserved for the eldest grandmother, who, let's face it, probably had the most experience knowing exactly when someone needed to be told, "Drink this and go to bed before you ruin the rice." One mainstream historical fact here. During the Lê dynasty in the 15th century, Vietnamese court physicians actually recorded Siu Bien Voi in formal medicinal scrolls, noting its usefulness not just for sleep, but for calming emotional heat in the liver and heart. Emotional heat. If that's not the most poetic way to say this guy's stressed out, I don't know what is. Now, here's the twist. Siu Bien Voi contains a powerful alkaloid called rotundine. Western science has studied it and confirmed its sedative properties. However, historians still argue whether the root's real effectiveness comes from the plant itself or from the ritual that surrounds it, because the preparation is a full evening event. First, the root must be cleaned with rainwater, not tap. Then it's sliced with a ceremonial blade. No steel, preferably bronze or copper. It's simmered low, not boiled. And you're supposed to whisper calming thoughts into the steam. Yes, really. If you're impatient or negative while it brews, old folk wisdom insists the root turns its back on you. It won't work if you're grumpy. Honestly, if pharmaceuticals functioned that way, most of us would be doomed. You watch the steam curl up from the little pot, and you wonder how much of this ancient practice is about chemistry, and how much is choreography, a carefully rehearsed bedtime ballet designed to soothe the body by calming the mind. It's less about take this pill, and more about watch the water dance while your worries melt. From behind you, there's the creak of another mat being laid out. It's the young apprentice, the one who laughed earlier when she accidentally dropped a jar of fermented tamarind. She kneels beside the fire now, carefully watching the root. Tea steep, her eyelids already at half-mast. In her lap, she holds a small wooden box painted with lotus flowers. She opens it slowly, revealing a few rolled parchment scrolls, their edges browned with time. These are handwritten sleep prescriptions, passed down through her family. Each one contains a unique combination of herbs, roots, and intentions. One scroll details a remedy called 5-petal silence. It includes dried jasmine, lotus seed, aged ginger, a single strand of vanilla bean, and a prayer written in invisible ink, recited as the tea cools. No one really knows where this recipe came from. Some say it was gifted by a traveling monk who had a voice so soothing that even angry dogs fell asleep in his presence. Others believe it was written by a woman who dreamed the entire recipe one night after accidentally dozing off in a rice field. Historians still argue whether these origin stories are pure folklore or clever mnemonic devices to help people remember the ingredients. Either way, 5-petal silence works like a lullaby in liquid form. The apprentice sets the box aside and begins gently pounding a few lotus seeds in a stone mortar. Not just symbolic. Lotus seed has long been valued in Vietnamese medicine for promoting inner tranquility. It's said to stabilize the shen, or spirit. In simpler terms, it keeps your dreams from turning into horror movies. Fun fringe tidbit. In some villages, parents used to hang dried lotus pods over cribs to ensure dreamless sleep for infants. That's right, no dreams at all. Apparently, baby nightmares are not a new concern. Although no one explains what happens if the pod falls in the night. Hopefully, just an extra thump in the dark, and not a portal to baby ghost dimension. You lie back again, your body heavy and pliant like overcooked noodles. The steam from the root tea wraps around your face, just faintly. You start to understand why these remedies endured, even before clinical trials or wellness hashtags. There's something undeniably powerful about intention, especially when it smells like toasted cinnamon and carries the collective memory of 100 grandmothers muttering bedtime spells under their breath. And just when you think it can't get any cozier, the elder woman rises and places a thick herbal poultice on your chest. It's warm, not hot, just right. A mixture of fermented turmeric, camphor leaf, and crushed lafong nem, coral tree leaf. This plant is native to tropical Asia and often used for treating restlessness and muscular tension. In rural Vietnam, people still boil its leaves, and use the water to bathe children who refuse to settle down. Interestingly, some scientists believe lavong nem has muscle relaxant properties. But what's even more curious is this. Historians still argue whether the leaf's sedative reputation came from its pharmacology or from its other role as a windbreaker. Yep, this plant also helps with digestive gas. You're lying there with an ancient chest compress and secretly is doubling as a de-bloating spell. If that isn't multitasking, I don't know what is. A final handful of herbs is tossed into the fire now. The flames changed color slightly, tinged blue for just a breath of a second. Probably from the eucalyptus stems. Probably. The night air thickens with scent and memory. You can feel the herbalists of centuries past padding through the room in silence, adjusting the poultice here, whispering a lotus chant there. There's something soothing about being treated like someone worth tending to. Like the whole world has paused, so you can exhale fully, even if just for tonight. The apprentice catches your eye briefly. She smiles, and then she does something odd. She waves her hand in front of your forehead, like she's brushing away invisible cobwebs. It's part of an old belief that restless thoughts gather there during the day, like lint on a sweater. Brush them off and you sleep clean. So, you let her. A gentle breeze shuffles through the open slats in the bamboo wall, carrying with it the mingled perfume of mint, sandalwood, and something vaguely citrusy. Like a lime, forgot it was supposed to be tart. You feel it sweep across your cheeks, your arms, even your toes that somehow peek out from under the blanket, seeking attention like curious toddlers. The apprentice has finished preparing the second brew. This one is different. It's a paler color, almost translucent, served in a porcelain cup that looks like it was lifted from a dragon's tea set. Floating on the surface, one perfect blossom. Pale yellow with tiny ridges on each petal. You squint. It's hoa boi, grapefruit flower. If Q Bin Voi was the night's heavy hitter, this one is the featherweight champion of calm. Hoa boi, despite being part of the same family as the citrusy grapefruit that occasionally haunts bad breakfast buffets, is used in Vietnam for its delicate fragrance. The oil extracted from the blossom is known to slow heart rate, lower anxiety, and help with, you guessed it, sleep. Of course, modern spa culture has taken this and run wild, bottling the stuff into 78 essential oils. But here it's still brewed with reverence. You take a sip. The tea tastes like spring forgot to charge rent. Light, fragrant, almost too pretty to drink. Almost. Here's the mainstream historical detail of the night. During the Nguyen dynasty, especially under Emperor Tujuk, citrus blossoms like hoa boi were cultivated in royal gardens, not just for their beauty, but specifically for use in medicinal teas and aromatic baths. Royal concubines would bathe in grapefruit blossom water before bed to encourage dreams deemed worthy of memory. Makes your lavender pillow spray look like a sad squirt bottle, doesn't it? Now, the quirky twist. In some rural parts of northern Vietnam, there's a superstition that if a person smells grapefruit blossoms during the day, they'll fall in love. But if they smell it at night, they'll fall asleep and dream of a past life. Very specific. And very inconvenient if you just wanted to make marmalade and accidentally triggered a reincarnation montage. You lie back and let the blossom bob gently against your upper lip as you sip again, letting the floral mist of it coat your throat. It's not a knockout effect, no grand blackout moment, but more like a polite usher showing your thoughts to the exit. You didn't even notice how busy your brain was until it starts to quiet down. You think of that superstition again, a flower that guides dreams to former lives. You try to picture yourself in another time, in another body, lying on another mat, sipping this same tea. Maybe you were a tired scribe in a scroll library. Maybe a fisherman with sore shoulders and a stubbornly poetic soul. The apprentice clinks her cup to yours. Ningungon, she whispers. Sleep well. And you might, but not before you glance at what she's now arranging in a shallow clay bowl. A small pile of dried leaves, pointed, delicate, and almost blue in the firelight. That's lavoa, or Cleistocalix or perculatus. It's a plant so deeply woven into Vietnamese daily life that it's often forgotten as medicine. Most people think of it as a digestive tonic, served cold in summer. But what's less known is that lavoy has subtle sedative effects, especially when brewed fresh and drunk slowly, with your feet up and your troubles down. It's also mildly antimicrobial. So yes, you're technically drinking a germ-fighting lullaby. Still, historians argue whether lavoy's sedative fame is deserved or simply a convenient byproduct of dehydration during humid months. Basically, was it the leaf? Or just the fact that you were sipping something cool in 95-degree heat while lying in a hammock? The science is unclear, but the result, drowsy contentment, is hard to deny. The herbalist matriarch reappears, this time with a tiny lacquered box. She opens it and reveals a neat row of golden threads. They shimmer like the edges of a very fancy noodle dish. It's saffron. Imported centuries ago through maritime trade routes, saffron made its way from Persia through India and into Southeast Asia, where it became a precious additive in ceremonial foods, oils, and, you guessed it, sleep infusions. Now here's a fringe favorite. Some families in central Vietnam believed that saffron tea, when drunk under a full moon, gave you prophetic dreams. It was reserved for monks, seers, or the occasional overly ambitious teenager hoping to dream up next season's rice forecast. You were handed a bowl of it now. Saffron tea with a slice of ginger root and 2 dried goji berries floating like red bows in gold broth. You sip. It tastes like bedtime in a palace you only vaguely remember building. At this point, your body has stopped resisting sleep. You're not even pretending to pay attention to the frogs anymore, or the fan turning somewhere in the background like the world's laziest helicopter. A woman with calloused feet and a baby on her hip enters from the shadows. She places something beside your pillow. It's a bundle of dried herbs tied with hemp string, ngai ku, or mugwort. Ah yes, the beloved bittersweet sleepweed of Vietnamese folk medicine. Used in steaming, in baths, even burned like incense. It's said to clear cold wind from the body. A concept from traditional Vietnamese medicine that basically means get rid of whatever bad vibes are hiding in your joints. Modern medicine has found compounds in mugwort that interact with GABA receptors in the brain, similar to how sedatives like Valium do. But again, historians still argue whether its calming power comes from its pharmacological makeup or from the way the smell reminds people of being cared for, of childhood naps, of grandmothers waving smoky bundles around the bed frame while humming lullabies that sound like gentle scolding. You breathe in deeply, and there it is, sharp, earthy, strangely familiar. Mugwort doesn't knock you out. It draws you in, like a finger beckoning you closer to dreamland. A child nearby yawns so wide you hear it, then snores gently, like a tiny sleeping dragon. Your eyes flutter, the blossom still floats in your tea. You don't even need to finish it. The moon is higher now, tilting above the banana trees with the kind of soft silver glow that makes everything look like a dream already in progress. You shift slightly on the woven mat, a little more sunk into your bones, a little less concerned with where your phone is, or even what time it is. You're starting to realize that the body remembers rest like a forgotten song. The herbalist matriarch, now lit softly by a flickering oil lamp, hums an old lullaby that doesn't need translation. She opens a clay jar and stirs its contents with a bamboo spoon. You lean forward slightly, because the scent that rises is unexpected. There's honey in there, yes, but something else. Leafy, herbal, and with a hint of dried citrus rind. She ladles it into a cup, hands it to you, and mouths the name, Tia To. Ah, Perilla frutescens, known more casually in Vietnamese kitchens as Tia To, or purple perilla. You might have seen it garnishing a bowl of pho and mistaken it for a purple shiso leaf. But tonight, it's not flavor that matters, it's function. Perilla has long been used not just for digestion and colds, but also as a nighttime calming herb, especially when brewed with honey and citrus peel. The combination is slightly bitter, like a grown-up's version of orange juice, with an herbal aftertaste that lingers like good advice. You sip slowly, feeling it settle into your belly, nudging everything just slightly downward. It's not magic. It's mechanical, almost. Like your nervous system just got a polite memo. Hey, go ahead and clock out early tonight. Here's your mainstream historical fact for the hour. In the 19th century, Vietnamese herbal manuscripts referred to Tia To as both a wind-releasing and mind-softening agent, often recommended for women suffering from postpartum insomnia. That's right. Centuries before melatonin gummies started sponsoring podcasts, tired Vietnamese mothers were sipping perilla tea to gently coax their minds away from worry and back towards sleep. Now for the quirky side path. In some parts of the countryside, there was a superstition that perilla leaves kept nightmares away, not by ingesting them, but by placing them beneath the pillow in a small moon-blessed pouch. A protective plant against night spirits, like a botanical security system with better feng shui. You reach down and notice, in fact, there is a tiny fabric sachet beneath your pillow, embroidered with a faded crane and containing, well, you're guessing perilla, maybe dried pomelo rind, perhaps even a pinch of sandalwood dust. It smells faintly, like a childhood memory you can't quite name. And that's enough. But the herbs aren't done with you yet, because now another bowl is brought forward. This one filled not with tea, but with thinly sliced roots drying on a bamboo rack. They look like miniature scrolls curling at the edges. This is camphor jut, not true licorice root, but Scoparia dulcis, often called sweet broomweed. The Vietnamese version doesn't have the same intense anise flavor, but it's sweet enough to feel comforting and earthy enough to calm your guts, both literal and emotional. You're handed a small shot glass worth of the tea. It's warm, just warm enough. The sweetness hits first, followed by a calming wave that feels, oddly enough, like forgiveness. Like maybe your body's ready to stop arguing with itself. Still, historians argue whether camphor jat was used more for digestive calm or sleep support. It's been referenced in Vietnamese folk medical scrolls, yes, but its documented uses vary wildly. Some suggest it was a sidekick herb, a support player rather than a lead act. But in combination with other teas tonight, it adds a gentler note, a kind of soft herbal hug between heavier sedatives. You hear the matriarch murmur something to the apprentice. The younger woman steps outside, and returns moments later with a tightly rolled bundle of long grasses. She unties it like an ancient scroll. Inside, dried stalks of ko ngot, Vietnamese stevia. Now don't worry, no one's trying to turn this into a sugar-free energy drink commercial. What's interesting here is that stevia wasn't just prized for sweetness. It was used in ancient Vietnamese villages as a buffer, a sweetness to mask bitter medicines and make sleep brews more palatable for elders, children, and fussy husbands. But here's the twist. Too much of it, they said, would bring overly vivid dreams. Dreams that weren't always welcome. Some households even restricted its use to only one night a week, and never on full moons. Again, historians still debate whether this was just folklore or a quietly agreed upon sleep boundary among generations of dreamers. Tonight it's used sparingly, a single leaf dropped into your next cup like a quiet compliment. The blend it enhances? Larsen, lotus leaf. Here we go. This one is a heavyweight in Vietnamese sleep lore. Lotus is sacred in Vietnam, not just symbolically, but botanically. Every part of the plant is used, but the dried leaf in particular is known for its sedative properties. It's slightly bitter, slightly grassy, and carries with it the reverence of temple gardens and still ponds. You're given a mug of it now, no additions, no sweetener. Just the essence of stillness. One sip and your thoughts slow down. Another, and you remember how to exhale like you mean it. The lotus leaf was often used in Vietnamese monasteries, especially among monks who couldn't afford to be restless. Sleep wasn't just recovery, it was ritual. If your dreams were cluttered, your morning meditations would be too. And now, here you are, meditating in a horizontal position. Your legs stretched out, your eyelids heavier by the minute, and the sound of boiling water slowly replaced by the chorus of night insects tuning their lullaby orchestra. The matriarch smiles. She's not surprised. She's seen this progression before. She places one last object in front of you, a shallow clay disc filled with tiny black seeds, each a little larger than a grain of sand. Hat Vung Jen, black sesame. Not a tea this time. A bite, a night snack, slightly toasted with a drop of honey, rich in tryptophan, smooth in texture. The traditional Vietnamese belief? A small spoonful of black sesame before bed strengthens blood, nourishes the liver, and cools internal heat. Which, let's be honest, is exactly what you want after a long day of being too online. One spoonful. Chewed slowly, you lie back again. The moon's moving westward. Even the frogs sound tired now. And somewhere deep in your chest, you feel it. Not just sleep approaching, but trust. You trust the plants. You trust the women who gathered and brewed them. You trust your breath, slower now. Like the tide coming in for a nap of its own. The clay roof crackles faintly overhead, cooling with the night. You roll onto your side just a little, eyes half-lidded, breath warm and even. But before sleep takes you entirely, there's another brew to try. One that's a bit more elusive, a bit more mysterious. The kind of thing you'd need to hear about from someone's grandmother's cousin's neighbor. It's a plant called Kai Sha Jen, black chiretta. In modern use, it's more famous for its supposed cancer-fighting properties. But in traditional Vietnamese villages, especially in the north, it had a quieter role, calming the nervous system, grounding excess yang energy, and as the elders used to say, cooling the fire in the chest. Now, you're probably wondering how anything with black in its name could be connected to dreaming peacefully. But that's the trick. Sa Jen has this woody, slightly bitter backbone. a flavor that hits your tongue like the start of a lullaby that ends 3 notes early. You sip, and it doesn't beg for approval. It simply exists. A sort of forest tea, like you're drinking the memory of moss and bark. Calming, but with a tiny edge of seriousness. The kind of seriousness that says, you need rest, not scrolling. You sit with it a while, the warmth sliding down your throat like soft velvet rope. It doesn't make you sleepy right away. Instead, it makes everything quieter, like turning down the brightness on your thoughts. Mainstream historical fact? Vietnamese field medics during wartime reportedly used exargen to help anxious soldiers rest in between night watches. It wasn't a knockout herb. It didn't sedate. It just eased the grip, loosened the mental clutter. And when you're trying to fall asleep in a bunker while hoping not to get bombed, that matters. But here's a little folk detail you wouldn't find in your average health article. Some villagers believed that if you brewed sargen under a full moon, the tea would whisper your ancestors' dreams into your sleep. So yeah, no pressure or anything. Just drink this tea and maybe inherit some cosmic family secrets. Scholars still argue whether this association with ancestor dreams was more spiritual than pharmacological, or whether certain alkaloids in the plant really did affect dream intensity. But those arguments tend to happen in air-conditioned conference rooms, far away from the real-world experience of drinking tea under a starry sky with your feet bare and your worries slowly dissolving like sugar in hot water. The matriarch, still watching, nods approvingly. She can tell the tea is working, not because you're snoring, not yet, but because your jaw has unclenched. Your shoulders aren't climbing toward your ears, and you haven't checked an imaginary phone screen in a while. She motions to the apprentice, who returns with a shallow basket filled with freshly steamed leaves. Kai Lac Tien, passion flower. In Vietnam, they call it sleep vine, which should tell you everything you need to know. Passion flower grows wildly in Vietnam's central highlands, often wrapping itself around fences, temple gates, and the occasional unbothered goat. The leaves look like something out of a fairy tale, soft and spindly, with delicate spirals that seem to hum lullabies even before you brew them. The tea is pale, almost clear, with a taste like slightly floral, grass clippings, but in a good way. Think green tea's dreamier cousin, the one who writes poetry and always shows up barefoot. You sip, and the change is immediate. Your breath deepens. Your chest feels looser. You're not just sleepy. You're okay with being sleepy. Historically, Lac Tien was a go-to herb for monks, students, and overly romantic teenagers. Anyone who thought too much and needed to not for a while. It's been recorded in Vietnamese herbal manuscripts as early as the 18th century, usually as part of a multi-herb blend for calming what was then called heartwind, a poetic phrase for anxiety. The fringe tidbit. Some temples used to brew it for their sacred statues. Yep, not for the monks. For the Buddha statues, the idea was that offering calming herbs to the divine helped restore balance to the temple energy. The statues didn't drink it, obviously, but the gesture mattered. Like giving chamomile to your houseplants. There's debate among historians whether Lac Tien's actual sedative strength justified this reverence, or if it was simply beloved because of its dreamy symbolism. Either way, tonight is doing its thing, quietly, steadily, from leaf to limb. At this point in the evening, the tea procession becomes more like a dance. You're not sure where one herb ends and another begins. They pass through your body like soft ghosts, each leaving a different trace. A lifted mood here, slowed thought there. The apprentice returns, and this time she's holding something unusual. A little bundle of what looks like cinnamon bark, tied with a ribbon made from palm fiber. But it's not cinnamon, it's Quay Chi, Vietnamese cassia twig. Cassia isn't just for flavoring pho. It's also believed to warm the channels, which sounds like spa speak until you realize they're talking about blood vessels and energy flow. In sleepy terms, it prevents you from becoming too cold while you rest. If you've ever woken up with that weird icy feeling in your bones, this is what Quay Chi is supposed to protect against. But of course, there's a side effect. Quay Chi dreams are said to be especially vivid, sometimes even prophetic. In fact, some Vietnamese midwives would avoid it entirely during pregnancy, for fear it might conjure unsettling visions. You, however, are not pregnant. You're just very, very comfortable. The tea brewed from these twigs is sharper, spicier, and you're glad it comes in a tiny porcelain cup, like a bedtime espresso shot from the spirit world. The heat travels down your throat and nestles somewhere near your diaphragm, as if lighting a tiny candle behind your ribs. Again, historians aren't unified on whether Quay Chi's real benefit is physiological or just ritualistic. But the sensation is real enough. You feel like you've just been slightly tucked in by an herb that knows kung fu and also gives great hugs. By now, the frogs are whispering instead of croaking, and even the wind has taken off its shoes. You're floating more than sitting. Thoughts arrive like birds, then flutter off without fuss. And just when you think this ceremony has offered all it can, the matriarch brings out one final cup for the night. This one smells different. Smoky? Earthy? Almost dusty? It's Rekai Ngaiku, mugwort root. Most people hear mugwort and think witches or medieval European sleep rituals. But in Vietnam, Ngaiku has a long history too. It's usually associated with women's health and pain relief. But older generations used it in sleep pillows and teas to calm the liver and harmonize the blood. In other words, to soothe the deep stuff, the soul stuff. You sip and yeah, it's a little bitter. But the bitterness is grounding. Reminds you that sleep isn't just floating away. It's sinking in, rooting. Mugwort dreams were said to be full of messages, symbols, riddles you wouldn't understand until morning, or maybe never. And that's okay. Because sleep, real sleep, doesn't always need to make sense. It just needs to hold you gently, without asking questions. And that's where you are now, held. Gently, by herbs, by hands, by stories older than the streetlights in your city. The tea leaves are done for now, their work folded into your bloodstream like a warm whisper tucked into your veins. You rest your hands on your belly, feeling the breath move slowly. The hut is quieter, the candlelight lower, and even the shadows on the bamboo walls seem softer, like they've been listening too. But there's still something left to uncover. Something that doesn't steep in hot water or rest in a ceramic bowl. This part of the journey takes place under your head, literally. It's time to talk about Goi Tuoc Nam, Vietnamese herbal pillows. Yeah, pillows. But not the kind you impulse buy online at 2 a.m. These are hand-sewn bundles of dried herbs, often stitched into embroidered cloth, stuffed with blends chosen not just for aroma, but for what they do to your dreams. Tonight's pillow, the one quietly waiting behind your head, is filled with la boi, pomelo leaf, chush tan, pluchea indica, a little ngaiku, mugwort again, because it's a multitasker, and a touch of ko man trao, which loosely translates to better like grass. though no chewing is involved. The result is a kind of floral jungle funk, a mix of citrus, mint, and mystery, wrapped up in a cloth that smells like your grandma's garden after rain. The scent hits you the moment you lean back, not aggressively, but with that slow reveal of layers, like peeling back the curtain in a steam room. Pomelo leaf is especially prized. In Vietnamese households, it's often boiled for steam baths to cleanse bad energy or wind chill. A traditional diagnosis that basically means your body feels wrong and needs recalibrating. And in pillow form, it's meant to lift melancholy, ease tension, and make you dream of things that won't wake you up crying. A noble goal, really. Pluchea indica, also known as Indian camphor weed, is the unsung hero of the mix. Historically, it was used by traditional Vietnamese healers for joint pain, fevers, and general blindness. But stuff it in a pillow, and it becomes something else entirely. A soft, earthy grounding agent. Like giving your brain a little weighted blanket it didn't know it needed. Of course, not every herb in the pillow is there to be comforting. Some, like mugwort, ride that fine line between soothing and a little weird. Because let's be honest, mugwort dreams. They don't mess around. One night you're floating through moonlit rice fields, the next you're arguing with a water buffalo about taxes. But that's kind of the point. Here's the historical anchor for this sleepy innovation. Vietnamese herbal pillows are documented in the imperial court of the Nguyen dynasty, particularly in the 19th century, where nobles suffering from sleeplessness would have custom pillow blends made by palace herbalists. These weren't just for comfort. They were medical devices backed by traditional pulse diagnosis and recommendations from the court's Thuoc Nam, southern medicine. Experts. Fringe detail? Some pillow blends were reportedly designed not to promote sleep, but to induce prophetic dreams about political decisions. Yep, royal nap espionage. Picture an emperor dozing off, hoping his pillow will whisper whether to raise taxes or go to war. Historians still argue whether this was a real belief or just a poetic cover story for drugging people into compliance. Either way, the pillow stayed. And tonight, yours works beautifully. Within minutes, your thoughts become slippery. The to-do list fades. The questions stop demanding answers. You're not entirely awake and not quite dreaming. You're somewhere deliciously in between. The matriarch watches you closely, smiling at the slight flutter of your eyelids. Good, she whispers. You are leaving the world, not in a creepy way. More like letting go of the version of reality that requires passwords and performance reviews. This world, this sleepy, herb-scented, time-bending hut in the middle of a whispering jungle is a better place to be tonight. You shift slightly, and the pillow releases a new layer of scent. This one reminds you of your childhood, somehow. A smell you can't quite place. Something grassy and familiar. Maybe it's just your brain pulling out old scent memories to play with. Maybe it's the mugwort stirring up your subconscious like a lacy soup. Outside, a gecko makes that chirping call, like laughter on fast forward. The matriarch gestures again, and a final ritual begins. Not with tea, but with smoke. She lights a small clay censer. Inside, a thin coil of dried tram huang, Vietnamese agarwood, begins to smolder. The scent rolls out like incense's cooler cousin. Smoky, sweet, and oddly calming, like the spiritual version of putting on fuzzy socks. Agarwood is precious stuff, formed only when certain trees are infected by a rare mold. It's like nature's way of turning stress into perfume. Vietnamese temples have burned it for centuries in offerings and prayers. But here now, it's not about divinity. It's about mood. You Mood, same wavelength. The idea is that the scent of agarwood smooths the mind's sharp edges, makes your thoughts less jagged, more flowy. Like, if your worries were rocks, agarwood would be the river around them. There's a fringe belief, mostly from the Central Highlands, that burning agarwood while sleeping helps your spirit find the right dreams. Not the right answers, mind you, just the right dreams, which, honestly, sounds like the more useful thing. As the smoke curls upward and dances into the rafters, you feel your mind drift with it, floating now, not like a balloon, but like a leaf carried by a lazy current. In the background, the herbal pillow does its thing, holding your head, smelling like the memory of a lemon orchard that also sells wet moss. You're not sure what time it is, and that's a gift. Time here doesn't matter. You remember earlier how your muscles wouldn't quit clenching, how you couldn't stop rerunning conversations from 4 years ago that nobody else remembers. And now, those memories are still there, but they don't bite anymore. They're soft around the edges, blurred, muted, distant. Maybe it's the pomelo, maybe the mugwort. Maybe it's the fact that no one in this hut has checked a clock or made you feel like you had to be anything. There's a lull now, a pause. Even the insects are quieter. You sense that you're supposed to sleep, but not because you're tired, because you finally stopped fighting. The matriarch reaches out and brushes her palm gently over your forehead. Not a spell, not a ritual, just a human gesture of comfort. One last touch before she leaves you in the care of night. And as your eyes begin to close, you feel it. The dream coming on like soft thunder far away. A hum in your bones. A story preparing to unfold. The herbal pillow holds your head like an old secret. The smoke traces invisible patterns above you. And somewhere in the rafters, the ancestors settle in to watch. The dream takes its time arriving. It doesn't barge in. Just sort of leans against the doorway of your mind until you're too relaxed to say no. It has the slow confidence of someone who knows you'll follow eventually. And as your breath evens out and your shoulders sink further into the mat, another scent threads its way through the air. Faint, a little floral, a touch minty, like the ghost of a garden wafting by. You're not quite awake, but not fully dreaming either. And that's the sweet spot, because now, the next part of the journey begins. A nighttime herbal bath, but not for your body. This one's for the spirit. Think of it as a rinse cycle for the soul. Soft, steamy, full of leaves. You hear it before you see it. The splash of ladles, the drip of water down smooth wood. And then a hand, gentle, firm, guides you toward a basin carved from stone, half hidden by hanging vines. The matriarch gestures toward the steam with a nod. Time to wash away what the day put on you, she says, and her voice sounds like a lullaby disguised as a command. You undress in that dreamlike way, where nothing feels awkward. The steam curls around your ankles, up your legs, warm and whispering. Inside the basin, an herbal concoction steeped in centuries of sleepy wisdom. The water is tinged pale green, with flecks of leaf floating like sleepy koi. The mix tonight includes rao ma, gotukola, la vong nem, a type of coral tree leaf, hoan hai, jasmine flowers, and la ke, the starfruit leaf, which locals believe can pull heat from the body, calming restlessness. Gotukola is the headline act here. Mainstream historical fact. Used for millennia across Southeast Asia, this little round-leaved herb has long been praised for its ability to cool the blood, enhance memory, and lull the nervous system into a purring contentment. In Vietnamese tradition, it's sometimes sipped as a cooling juice during hot summers, but just as often, it's steeped for baths to unwind an overactive mind. Quirky detail. Coral tree leaves, those thick, almost leathery fronds from the Erythrina species, were traditionally used in village settings, not just for sleep, but for people with too many night demons. That's the folklore way of saying insomnia plus existential dread. Basically, you. As the warm water laps at your skin, there's a tingling at the base of your neck. Not discomfort, more like a gentle reminder from your nervous system that it's finally allowed to take a break. Your jaw unclenches, your toes uncurl. Even your thoughts stop trying to organize themselves into to-do lists. Historians still argue whether these bath rituals began in ancient monastic settings or among midwives in highland villages. Either way, the methods were passed down matrilineally. Recipes not written down, but whispered from grandmother to granddaughter, like lullabies with leaf measurements. You slide lower into the basin until your ears are just barely above the water, and the sound world changes. Everything becomes muffled, slowed, like listening to a rainforest through thick cotton. Your breath echoes like a distant tide. Somewhere nearby, a gourd ladle dips in and pours warm water over your shoulders again and again, each pour, erasing another layer of noise in your brain. The jasmine flowers float near your chest now, releasing bursts of scent with each ripple. It's not a perfume kind of jasmine, more earthy, like it knows you've had a hard year and wants to sit beside you in silence. You feel oddly understood by flowers. Don't overthink it. A quiet drumbeat picks up in the background. Not literal drums, more like your heartbeat syncing with something older. Like the pulse of a forest. Or maybe just your nervous system realizing, oh, we're safe now. And somewhere in this steamy quiet, you remember a story you didn't know you knew. About a village elder in the Red River Delta who kept a logbook of dream prescriptions. If a child couldn't sleep, the elder would prescribe a certain bath blend, not to be ingested, but to soak in before bed. One blend for restless limbs, another for nightmares, another for that awful feeling of being wide awake at 3 a.m. and convinced you're doing life all wrong. The ingredients weren't always clear. Some included obscure jungle mosses, dew collected at dawn, or the bark of trees that only grew near graveyards. Scholars still debate whether these blends had any pharmacological effect, or if the ritual itself was the medicine. Personally, doesn't matter. You're in the bath, and it's working. The water begins to cool slightly, just enough to coax you out. You stand slowly, and a warm cotton cloth is draped over your shoulders. Someone, possibly a dream version of your childhood aunt, presses a warm hand against your back. You're led through the trees again, the damp earth cool under your feet, your skin steamed and softened. Back in the hut, the matriarch waits. She nods approvingly. You look like someone who just argued with a thunderstorm and won. You lie back on the mat, towel still warm against your shoulders, herbal pillow back under your head, like it missed you. A fresh handful of mugwort has been placed on the coals. The scent rises in sleepy spirals, and your eyelids droop, again without a fight. This whole herbal bathing thing, it's not just hygiene. It's closure. You washed off the day, literally. The pressure, the tension, the random fragments of screen time, all gone down the leaf-scented drain. Your final thoughts before the dream takes you completely as slow and syrupy. Something about how your mind feels rinsed, how your body feels like it belongs to you again, how you kind of want to make jasmine baths a weekly thing, even if your neighbors start wondering why your backyard smells like an herbalist's honeymoon suite. Outside, the crickets begin their evening chorus again, softer this time, as if they too have finally settled. The hut grows quieter, your breath deepens. Somewhere in the mist of your mind, the jungle continues to hum its ancient lullaby. And the bath? It stays with you, in scent, in skin, in the softened memory of your bones. You don't remember falling asleep, only the stretch of time where dreams swirled like lazy fish in a pond. But you must have slept, because when you wake again, if you can call this waking, the light has shifted. It's a pale, pearly glow, the kind that makes you feel like you're inside a seashell. The jungle is quieter now, like it's tucking itself in too. You roll slightly on your herbal pillow, and a soft crinkle of dried leaves reminds you, yep, still in a hut, still being marinated in ancient Vietnamese sleep science. The air smells like a botanical apothecary in the best possible way. Then comes the sound, skirk, scritch, skirk. Not threatening, just methodical. Someone outside is shaving wood or grinding bark. Whatever it is, it sounds exactly like the kind of sound you don't mind listening to when you're halfway between nap number 3 and full-blown unconsciousness. You peek through the bamboo slats in the hut and see a new character enter your dream world / historical reenactment. A man with a mortar and pestle the size of a toddler. He's wearing one of those loose cotton shirts that looks both ancient and suspiciously like it could be sold on Etsy for $89. He's preparing a paste. You know this because he keeps muttering to himself and occasionally smells the mix with a reverent look. His nose wrinkles once, and he tosses in a bit more of something green. A perfectionist herbalist, clearly. Today's preparation? A salve made from ngai ku, Vietnamese mugwort, mixed with lemongrass oil, cinnamon bark, and a drizzle of fermented bean mash that smells surprisingly nice. It's not for eating, it's for rubbing. You don't resist when someone, again, maybe a dream aunt, gently lifts your arm and starts applying the warm, slightly gritty paste to your temples and down your spine. It's the exact temperature of a comforting memory. Maybe your grandmother used to do this, or maybe you saw it once in a half-remembered movie. Either way, it feels like coming home. Mainstream historical fact time. Mugwort has been used in Vietnamese folk medicine for centuries, not just as an herb to ingest or steep, but as a rub to ease muscle tension, cool inflammation, and, no surprise here, induce drowsiness. In some temples, monks used to rub a mugwort balm behind their ears and at the base of their neck before long meditative sessions, not to knock themselves out, but to quiet the monkey brain. That relentless voice in your head? Mugwort's got hands for it. Quirky tidbit. In some rural villages, elders would add a bit of ground seashell to the paste. Yes, literal powdered seashells, believing it softened the spirit's edges before sleep. It sounds poetic until you realize they were probably using leftover clamshells from dinner. Still, if it works, you lie back, the balm slowly soaking into your skin, its scent creating an invisible halo around your head. It doesn't sting. It doesn't even tingle. It just convinces your thoughts to slow down, like someone turned your brain speed dial to low simmer. A cool cloth is placed across your forehead, the herbalist's final act. Then he slips away with the same quietude of a closing dream. The hut creaks slightly in the breeze. Outside, A single toki gecko lets out its barky little cry, somewhere between a hiccup and a door hinge. You let out a laugh through your nose. That lizard sounds like it lost an argument with a squeaky toy. But even that doesn't break the spell. Your limbs feel like they're melting into the mat now. And not as in the creepy horror movie way. More like how chocolate melts into warm bread. This is the point where your brain wants to say, "What time is it?" But your body gently interrupts. Shh. Not our problem anymore. Historians still argue whether these mugwort balms were strictly medicinal or had more ritualistic purposes. There are records of them being used during lunar festivals, applied before divination, and even rubbed onto babies' feet to ensure peaceful dreams. Some say the herbs closed the spirit gate at night, preventing wandering energies from entering. Others think that's just a poetic metaphor for getting a toddler to sleep through the night. Either way, you kind of wish you had a jar of the stuff back home. As you drift, half-lidded, you notice the hut has quieted even further. The fire has dimmed. The herbal pillow now smells like thyme itself. The balm on your neck is cool and faintly sweet, like old wood under the sun. Another memory that might not be yours slips in. A monk, younger than you'd expect, carefully grinding mugwort between stones while humming a lullaby. He's not doing it for money. He's doing it for his mother, whose back pain has been keeping her awake. His hands are methodical, sure, but his heart is fully in it. The scene vanishes just as quickly, but the warmth of it stays. You shift slightly and sigh. Your bones respond with a happy creak. If someone offered you a choice between staying in this hut forever and going back to your apartment with its weird plumbing noises and tax emails, yeah, you'd choose the hut. Sorry, modern life. But of course, this isn't about escaping forever. This is about remembering that the world once believed leaves could soothe rage, that a bit of bark and patience could hush a racing heart, that dreams could be coaxed, not chased. The balm continues to work its quiet magic, nudging your muscles deeper into stillness. You lose track of how long you've been lying here. An hour? A night? A lifetime? Doesn't matter. The point is, your breath is slow. Your mind is quiet. And the mugwort did its job. One last breeze moves through the hut, and the gecko hiccups again. You smile, just slightly. A sleep reaches out and takes your hand. You wake again, or maybe just rise a little closer to the surface of consciousness, when something soft brushes your cheek. A feather? A leaf? A dream wearing fuzzy socks? Hard to say. What you do know is that the light has changed again, drifting into the honey-colored haze of late afternoon. Shadows stretch long and lazy through the slats of your herbal nap hut, like they too are contemplating a second snooze. From somewhere outside, the clink of porcelain, the low murmur of voices, and, wait, a laugh. Someone just chuckled, the kind of chuckle that only follows a good sip of something slightly too strong and far too warm for logic. You know that laugh. It says, "This tea slaps." Turns out you've wandered into the tea phase of your traditional Vietnamese sleep spa, and no one told your frontal cortex. Not that it minds. A woman with kind eyes and the kind of patience that makes monks jealous hands you a ceramic cup no bigger than a walnut. It's painted with delicate lotus flowers and chipped in one corner, which somehow makes it feel like it's passed more wisdom than any self-help podcast ever will. Inside the cup, a liquid the color of twilight. It smells earthy and floral, with just the faintest whiff of licorice. It's an infusion of lavong nem, coral leaf tree, steeped alongside pandan and a sliver of dried tangerine peel. It's warm but not hot, sweet but not sugary. Your first sip tastes like the moment right before a good idea, mainstream historical fact. The coral leaf tree, native to Southeast Asia, has long been used in Vietnamese herbal medicine for its sedative properties. In particular, the leaves are known for containing alkaloids that produce a mild calming effect, almost like nature's version of a very polite lullaby. In traditional settings, people would gather the broad, velvety leaves at dusk, steep them, and drink the brew before winding down for the night. The woman watches as you sip. You think you're supposed to say something wise. Instead, you burp just the tiniest, politest burp imaginable. Her grin says, "Same." As your body absorbs the warmth of the tea, you're led by gentle gestures into another part of the compound. A quiet, open-air nook under a low thatched roof, filled with mats, cushions, and the unmistakable aroma of lime leaf and frangipani. It's not just a nap space, it's a dreaming den. And here comes the quirky detail. A man in his 70s, barefoot and grinning like he knows a secret, begins playing a single-stringed instrument called a janbao. The sound it makes? Imagine if your heartbeat could hum. Wavy, resonant, impossibly soothing. The tones bend in a way that feels like they're massaging your ribcage from the inside out. He plays while you lie down, and someone else, maybe the herbalist again, maybe just an especially well-trained ghost, places thin slices of steamed ginger wrapped in banana leaf along your wrists. Why? Apparently, they believe it helps the tea find its way. You're not here to argue, you're here to vibe. Historians still argue whether teas like these were originally intended strictly for sleep, or if they had more ceremonial roots. Some records suggest that coral leaf infusions were used in ancestral offerings before bedtime rituals, while others hint that village healers would prescribe them during mourning periods, as grief is one of the quickest ways to destroy your sleep cycles. Either way, the act of sipping slowly, letting the leaves coax your nervous system towards stillness, was never just about the drink. With every minute, your body takes the hint. Shoulders loosen, jaw unclenches. That tight spot between your eyes, gone. Whatever your Wi-Fi password is, irrelevant now. You lie there, listening to the soft oscillation of the janbao, the rhythmic chirps of frogs testing their voices, and the occasional slosh of another round of tea being poured for someone a few mats down. You get the distinct sense that none of these people are in a hurry. They could be here all night, and no one would think that was weird. It makes you wonder, how did we get so far away from this? From the idea that rest isn't a luxury but a process, not something you steal in 5-minute breaks between spreadsheets, but something you prepare for, honor, and steep in, literally. Someone nearby laughs again. The kind of low, wheezy laugh that tells you the tea may have been spiked with something a little extra. You peek over and see someone's grandpa shaking his head with the sleepy satisfaction of a man who's earned a nap medal. The woman returns, tucks a small sachet under your pillow. You sneak a peek. It's filled with crushed lotus seeds, dried jasmine, and a pinch of camphor bark. "For dreams," she whispers. You nod, not sure whether she means to summon them or to protect you from them. Either way, it smells wonderful. And here's a lovely footnote from the fringe. In some parts of northern Vietnam, there's a belief that if you drink coral leaf tea 3 nights in a row while sleeping with a camphor sachet, your dreams will show you a past life. There's even an old poem that warns, "Dream too deep, and you may not return the same. But hey, what's a little metaphysical transformation in exchange for 8 solid hours? You stretch your legs across the mat, wiggle your toes, and feel the tea weaving through your bloodstream like a lullaby in liquid form. Your eyes flutter, not in exhaustion, but in surrender. This isn't the kind of tired you fight. This is the kind you lean into like a hammock strung between 2 stars. Outside, the frogs have really picked up the tempo. It's basically a jungle jazz band now. The tea man chuckles somewhere behind you and mutters something about the frogs being gossipers. You don't question it. You just nod, eyes mostly shut, as the jambal slides into another haunting note. And then, silence. Not empty silence, full velvety silence. The kind that feels like someone hit pause on the chaos of the universe. You lie there, heart slowed, breath like a tide pool, and let the coral leaf tea lull you just a little further into the land where dreams carry messages written on banana leaves. You dream of rivers. Not literal ones, though there might be some water lapping gently in the distance. No, this is more like a river made of smells and sounds, of sensations folding into each other, of herbal trails that snake between memories that may or may not belong to you. Somewhere in that internal meander, you pass a woman with silver hair, grinding something with a mortar and pestle the size of your torso. She's humming a lullaby your bones seem to recognize. When your eyes reopen, no jolt, no panic, just that slow resurfacing like a lazy koi fish. You realize the light has shifted again. That golden glow has faded into violet, and the corners of the Nap Pavilion are pooling with early evening hush. Someone replaced your tea with a small bowl of warm water scented with lemongrass and green mandarin. A polite reminder to return to the realm of the living. You sit up, joints crackling like ancient bamboo, and notice a new herb being passed around. Kai lac tien, Vietnamese passion flower. The leaves are slightly fussy, the smell faintly citrusy with a medicinal twist. Tonight, you're told, is a special brew. And this plant? It's the guest of honor. Mainstream historical fact incoming. Vietnamese passion flower has been used in traditional medicine for centuries, primarily as a mild sedative and anxiety remedy. Local physicians believed it helped calm noi niet, internal heat, which could manifest as restlessness, irritability, or insomnia. It was particularly popular among women experiencing postpartum sleeplessness, or older folks navigating the delightful chaos of aging hormones. What's weird is how specific the preparation gets. You're shown a set of miniature steps that involve drying the leaves in shade, not sun, boiling them no longer than 7 minutes, no more, no less, and steeping them alongside a fragment of roasted rice. Not for flavor, they say, for memory. You blink. Whose memory, exactly? Yours? The plant's? Grandma Hoa's, who once forgot where she buried her dream journal in 1943. And here's your fringe tidbit. Some village folklore insists that passion flower tea not only induces vivid dreams, but allows the drinker to hear voices, specifically those of ancestral spirits. But only if the leaves were harvested under a full moon. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic storytelling or a cleverly disguised method of keeping curious kids from touching sacred plants on moonlit nights. Either way, it's a great excuse to dramatically whisper. The tea is watching you. A small gathering forms in the center of the space. Everyone sitting cross-legged on mats arranged in a rough circle, lit from above by hanging lanterns made of silk and wire. The passion flower brew is poured into wooden cups, and there's a brief ritual of silence. broken only by the soft rustling of the wind through palm fronds and someone's stomach, rumbling with deep narrative timing. You take your first sip. It's not a taste you'd chase in a trendy cafe. Slightly bitter, a little grassy. But your body registers it like a long-forgotten key slipping into a familiar lock. Shoulders slump, eyelids drift. Your inner monologue gets quieter, more polite. No longer shouting about deadlines or asking where you left your phone charger. Around you, the others seem to melt into their mats, sipping slowly, some already laying back down as if sleep is simply a continuation of the tea itself. You start to do the same, but are intercepted. Gently, of course, by a woman who introduces herself as an herbal dream conductor. You're about to laugh, but she looks too serious. Like this is a job with performance reviews. She leads you toward a smaller pavilion tucked away behind hanging vines and wind chimes. Inside, the air feels cooler, and bundles of dried herbs hang like sleepy chandeliers above a nest of pillows. At the center sits a bowl of smoking coals, atop which someone has sprinkled crushed bay laurel, rosemary, and dried orange blossom. The smell is incredible. Cozy but not sleepy. Like your brain knows it's being asked to go on a field trip. You lie down. She waves a palm fan in a slow circle above your head, murmuring something in a language that, even if you understood it, would probably make no more sense than a lullaby hummed in reverse. And here's the open debate for this round. Some researchers believe passion flower's soothing effects come from its compounds interacting with GABA receptors in the brain, essentially quieting down nerve activity. Others argue the effects are too mild for anything but placebo, and that traditional claims are more about ritual than chemistry. Still, when a whole village insists this stuff makes you dream clean, it's hard not to believe them a little. You inhale deeply. The smoke, the tea, the soft rhythmic tapping of bamboo on stone somewhere in the background. Everything in this place seems designed to lull you toward a different kind of awareness. One that's horizontal, slightly slippery, and unbothered by whatever your inbox has planned for you tomorrow. And just when you think you might drift off again, she places something under your tongue. A tiny sliver of dried starfruit, soaked in lime and honey, dusted with powdered cinnamon. For lucid dreaming, she explains. Not guaranteed, but you never know. The flavor is sweet tart and surprising, like a sudden memory of summer during a long winter. And as you lie back, you wonder, what if the mind really does need flavor to find the edges of the dream world? Outside the pavilion, someone begins to hum. Not a tune you recognize, just a winding, wordless melody that loops like a lullaby with nowhere better to be. The kind of sound that makes your thoughts dissolve like sugar in warm tea. You press deeper into the cushions, warmth blooming in your chest. The passion flower brew, guiding your breath into longer and slower waves. You think, maybe for the first time in a long while, that you might actually sleep without interruption. That the hum of this place might carry you all the way through to dawn, dream-laced and feather-light. And just before you let go, one last thought drifts across your mind. If this tea really does open doors to ancestral whispers, well, you hope your ancestors are polite, or at least interesting. Then again, in a place like this, even ghosts probably know how to make a good cup of tea. You wake up to the sound of water. Not a stream, not the ocean. Something slower, more deliberate. A gentle pouring, as if someone's tipping a bowl of liquid light just outside your dream. You don't move. Not because you're trapped in sleep paralysis or anything spooky like that, but because your limbs are content, softened by some botanical magic that has quietly rewired your entire relationship with rest. The dream conductor, still barefoot and ghost quiet, kneels nearby, refilling the incense bowl with a new blend. This time, you catch a hint of clove, a spike of ginger, and something floral you can't quite place. Frangipani, maybe. The smoke twirls toward the rafters in little question marks. This morning, if you can call it that in this dreamy timelessness, you're being introduced to tia to, the Vietnamese perilla leaf. It looks like something you'd expect in a salad, which is true. But here it's more likely to end up in your tea or tucked behind your ear like a medicinal accessory. The herbalist explains that tia to is often brewed into a calming bedtime drink, paired with honey or stewed into soups meant to banish colds and nightmares alike. It's also considered a cooling herb, perfect for balancing out and heat, that fiery imbalance blamed for everything from headaches to cranky toddlers. Mainstream historical fact. During the Tran dynasty, perilla leaves were prized not just for culinary use, but for their role in warding off anxiety and soothing fevers. Physicians in the imperial court kept them dried in woven sachets under their pillows. So basically, even ancient royalty needed a weighted blanket and some sleepy tea now and then. Here's the slightly kookier bit. Some elders claim that tia to, when boiled in rainwater collected from a banana leaf, can prevent bad dreams from hitchhiking back after temple visits. Bad dreams apparently being the emotional equivalent of sand in your shoe. You might not notice them at first, but they'll definitely ruin your walk. Historians still argue whether this belief was a metaphor for psychological cleansing or just a really poetic excuse to teach kids not to eavesdrop on grown-up conversations at spiritual ceremonies. Either way, it sounds much cooler than go to bed or else. Today's ritual is slower. No dramatic steaming bowls, just a gentle infusion of perilla leaf in a shallow ceramic dish, set beside a warm washcloth. You're instructed to inhale the scent deeply, then place the cloth over your forehead, eyes closed, and wait. So you do. The effect is immediate. Not sleepy exactly, more like someone pressed the mute button on the part of your brain that keeps suggesting you check your notifications or reorganize your sock drawer. You're suspended in a state somewhere between nap and meditation, with the faint smell of crushed leaves acting as an herbal lullaby. Across the pavilion, someone is folding silk scarves, each one dyed with herbs used the night before. The colors are soft, earthy, nothing synthetic or shouty. You're told that each dye carries the essence of the plant. Passion flower leaves create dusky green, pandan becomes pale amber, and perilla leaves lend a lavender-tinged maroon. People wrap themselves in these scarves to remember the dreams that matter. You're about to ask what that even means when the dream conductor smiles, as if she already heard your question, and simply says, "The ones that feel like they belong to someone else, but still make you cry." Okay then. There's tea again, of course. This time it's a simple trio: perilla, lemongrass, and a touch of wild mint. No sweeteners, just steam and clarity. You cradle the warm bowl in your hands like it's a tiny moon. Sipping it feels like rinsing your thoughts in cool water. It doesn't make you drowsy, more like it gently invites your nervous system to loosen its belt and stay a while. One of the pavilion regulars, an elderly man with eyebrows that belong in a museum, tells you that he used to struggle with night terrors until he began sleeping on a pillow stuffed with dried perilla and pandan. It's like building a nest for your thoughts, he says, patting his head. Birds don't scream when they're nested. Another visitor laughs. You've never met my parrot? Everyone chuckles softly. Even the wind seems amused. And here's your open debate moment. Some scientists argue that the calming effects of perilla are too subtle to be therapeutic. Others say its mild sedative properties have just never been properly studied outside of East Asian ethnobotany. What's clear is that, chemically speaking, the leaf contains rosmarinic acid and flavonoids, which might help modulate stress and inflammation. But no double-blind study has ever measured how effective it is at preventing ghost dreams or helping parrot owners sleep through the night. Still, when every person in the pavilion has the same drowsy, satisfied look, it's hard to deny the vibes. You lie back again, this time with a little sachet of perilla and lavender resting on your chest like a paperweight for your soul. There's soft chimes playing now, wooden ones, maybe carved from cinnamon bark, and your breath starts syncing with their rhythm. You're not asleep, not yet, but you're also not quite awake. You're somewhere in between, in that soft pocket of stillness where memory, folklore, and molecules all swirl together like tea leaves in a clay cup. The herbalist tells you this is where true rest begins, not with unconsciousness, but with surrender, with allowing yourself to be quiet enough for ancient plants to whisper their sleepy secrets. And for a few long minutes, you think you hear them. The chimes fade, not because they stop, but because your brain slowly starts classifying them as background noise, the same way it filters out refrigerator hum or distant traffic, except way less irritating. You feel weightless again, buoyed by the herbs, the incense, and whatever spell this Nat Pavilion keeps casting on you like clockwork. This time, they introduce sen, or lotus, and not just any lotus. This is the night-blooming kind. Its petals pale pink, with tips like dusk, opening slowly under the stars. Lotus flowers are pretty much royalty in Vietnamese culture, equal parts botanical marvel and spiritual metaphor. You don't even need to know anything about Buddhism to feel reverent just sitting near one. They radiate quiet power, like the teacher in school who never raised her voice, but everyone obeyed anyway. You're handed a lotus-wrapped parcel, warm and fragrant. Inside, it's sticky rice, infused with crushed lotus seed and a hint of ginger. A bedtime snack, apparently. You eat slowly, savoring the texture, the heat, the way the ginger pinches you back into your body, just enough to remind you it's there. Then they serve a tea made from dried lotus stamens, lightly floral, gently sedative, and surprisingly earthy. No honey this time. It's not needed. Mainstream fact time. Lotus seeds have been used for centuries in Vietnamese traditional medicine as a remedy for insomnia, anxiety, and even heart palpitations. Known as lien tu, these seeds are believed to calm the spirit and support restful sleep, especially in the elderly. In the old royal courts of Hue, lotus seed paste was often part of evening rituals, spoon-fed by candlelight in lacquer bowls with dragon handles. And here's your quirky twist. There's a belief, still whispered in some riverside towns, that if you drink tea made from lotus harvested during a lunar eclipse, you'll dream of one of your past lives. Not all of them, mind you, just one. Usually the one you've been ignoring. Historians still argue whether this myth emerged as a symbolic device for karmic reflection, or as a weird flex from herbalists who like to time their harvests with celestial events. Either way, you kind of wish you'd brought a journal. Someone, maybe the old man with the parrot, is playing a junbao, A single-stringed instrument that hums like it's tuning itself to your mood. Each note hangs in the air a little too long, like it's waiting for you to answer it. And you almost do. You're guided now toward a low cot draped in mosquito netting so thin it looks like silk, spun from morning fog. On the pillow lies a single lotus petal, curved slightly like a smile, or maybe a question mark. You lie down and feel the woven mat cradle your back in just the right way. Firm, but forgiving. They don't give you another tea this time. Just a cup of warm water with a sliver of dried lotus root floating inside. It tastes like nothing and everything, mineral, floral, and faintly sweet. You sip it slowly, and for a second, you're sure you hear the root whisper, shh. Time stretches again. You drift in and out, not sleeping, but unhooked from wakefulness. At one point, your arm twitches, some lingering stress memory, still trying to escape. But it doesn't last. The twitch dissolves, absorbed by the calm. Even your bones feel like they've exhaled. One of the attendants walks by and places something small in your hand. It's a prayer bead, carved from lotus seed, smooth from generations of handling. You turn it slowly between your fingers, and without quite meaning to, you match your breaths to the rotation. Inhale, turn, exhale, turn. You lose count, which you're pretty sure is the point. And then a story. A traveling monk once fell asleep in a lotus field near Hoi An, cradling a bowl of tea and a single sandalwood flute. When he woke, he claimed to have met his grandmother in a dream, only she lived inside a cloud and cooked soup from moonlight and forgotten wishes. Everyone thought it was a metaphor until he described her mole exactly. Now the local temple leaves lotus seeds on the altar every full moon, just in case she's still dreaming in there somewhere. You're not sure what to believe anymore, but that's sort of the appeal. Certainty doesn't live here. Only warmth, aroma, and time that flows like honey. One of the younger attendants, barefoot with an undercut and a t-shirt that reads, "Nap like a monk," leans over to check your pulse. It's not a medical thing. She's just feeling whether you've settled. Apparently, you have. She nods once and disappears like mist. You stay on the cot a little longer than usual. Your fingers release the prayer bead. It lands with a soft plunk in a bowl of petals on the floor beside you. Perfect aim. You briefly consider asking if lotus-scented luck is a thing, but then forget what the question was before your lips move. The dream conductor glides in again, trailing a fresh waft of lotus incense behind her. She sits near your feet and begins humming, something wordless and circular, like a song written by water. It wraps around you, not asking for attention, just keeping you tethered to this slow, fragrant, enchanted world where plants hold secrets and sleep isn't an escape, but a return. And just when you think you've dissolved completely, she says, barely above a whisper, one more remedy remains. You rise slowly, as if your body now respects gravity just enough to acknowledge it, but not enough to be weighed down. There's no grogginess, no slap of returning awareness, just an easy shift, like a page turning in a breeze. You follow the lantern-lit path once more, deeper into the garden. Your bare feet recognize the cool stones beneath them, like an old friend you didn't know you missed. And here, in the quietest corner of the temple grounds, they bring out the final potion. It doesn't look like much, just a small earthen bowl, glazed with a crackled jade sheen. Inside, a pale green liquid with a scent so delicate it only registers when you lean in. This, they tell you, is made from kai bien voi, the moonseed vine. You blink, and the air seems to shimmer for a second, not from the herb, but from the weight of what it means to finish a ritual like this. Mainstream historical fact alert. The root of the Kai Bin Voi plant, also known scientifically as Stephania glabra, has been used for centuries in traditional Vietnamese medicine to treat insomnia and restlessness. It's a mild sedative, particularly favored in regions like Bac Giang and Ninh Binh, where night farming and early rising made deep sleep more than a luxury. It was an occupational requirement. What sets Bin Voi apart, they whisper, is its rhythm. It doesn't knock you out like a punch to the brain. It lulls. The active compound, L-tetrahydropalmitine, which sounds like something a sci-fi villain would inject, works subtly, coaxing the nervous system into slumber like a lullaby drawn in vapor. Your quirky tidbit this time. Legend says that Bin Voi only grows well when planted by someone who's kept a secret for more than 10 years. The roots curl and swell with the burden of hidden truths. And the bigger the bulb, the older the secret. Some root harvesters, apparently, refuse to speak during planting season, just to hedge their bets. Historians still argue whether this connection between silence and potency was a symbolic nod to the meditative practice of stillness, or just an excuse for farmers to ignore their in-laws for a few weeks. You take the bowl, warm between your palms, and drink. It doesn't taste like anything, and yet somehow tastes like every bedtime story ever told. There's a mossy undernote, like a memory of rain, and the faintest bitterness right at the end. Like a closing door you're strangely glad to walk through. They don't say anything. They don't have to. This is the finale, the end of the garden path. You walk back to the Nat Pavilion one final time, the world quieter than before. Not because sound has left, but because your need to interpret it has. You lie down on the same mat, but it feels like a different universe. The air is still thick with herbs, but now you know them. You've met them, tasted them, felt them stir your insides like a lazy spoon in warm tea. A cat appears, because of course it does. It hops up and settles near your shoulder, not touching, just sharing space. It blinks once, slowly, and then closes its eyes. The message is clear. Follow my lead. As you lie there, the sleep that finds you isn't heavy. It's gentle. It curls around your limbs like steam. You breathe in, and the temple breathes with you. And somewhere in the folds of that sleep, maybe tonight, maybe weeks from now, you'll remember something important. Not urgent, not dramatic, just essential. Like where you left that part of yourself that used to dream more easily. Like the name of the wind, or the way your grandmother folded laundry while humming a song you thought you'd forgotten. Or maybe not. Maybe you'll just sleep. And that's enough. And now, as the last thread of this journey wraps around you like a silk shawl at twilight, let the images linger softly. Not loud or sharp, just hovering on the edges. Lotus petals on water. Herbal steam rising from a clay pot. A cat blinking in slow time. Let your breath lengthen. In through your nose. Slow. And out. Like a tide slipping quietly from the shore. You've wandered through gardens that still whisper in the dark. You've sipped from bowls carved with memory. You've met plants that remember how to rock a mind to sleep. The way a lullaby remembers the shape of a cradle. And now, as you sink beneath the weightless hush of that final remedy, there's nothing else you need to do. No questions to ask, no dreams to chase. Just the soft, continuous rhythm of breath and time. The shadows stretch out kindly now. the world presses pause. And you, gentle traveller, are exactly where you should be. Sleep well, and I'll see you next time.